In a previous video about Donald Trump and disinfectant in the lungs, I said something that has been pointed out to me that's vague. I'm going to cover this really quickly. When I said no one corrects him on his mistakes, I wasn't referring to everybody else on the planet, literally the entirety of humanity screaming loudly. I was referring to, specifically, the people who have the ability to have an effect on Donald Trump. The Republican Party, Fox News, and then down to where it should be. Everybody in the room that day, and specifically his staff. Deborah Bricks, apparently the doctor that was to his right, had a duty to correct him and get fired if necessary because it's more important than her job and more important than his wrath. He has a habit, a very, very strong habit that everyone acknowledges, that he doesn't give a damn if you're qualified about anything. He just wants loyalty. This may speak to the fact that Donald Trump may have put up with people who stabbed him in the back repeatedly in his life, and he just can't handle it anymore, and he wants that one deal breaker gone. I understand that. That's fine. The next thing is, if I was the security person at a business, and this has happened repeatedly, I've had to prevent the boss or CEO or a major shareholder from having access to the network or touching machinery or being in the building. Yes, I've locked a CEO out of his own bank. It was a major one, but I'm not going to tell you which one. Yes, that's a Fight Club joke. It was Wells Fargo. It was a local CEO. I don't know why they have multi-layered CEO, Chief Executive Officer, bottle washing, but I kicked him out. And he wasn't allowed in until he took a basic test to prove that he would acknowledge what the correct answers were. Didn't have to say I was right. He just had to take the national test on the basics, at the time. They actually had one. Why did I do that? I get paid up front because I know I'm going to piss somebody off important. Because it's always going to be somebody who doesn't believe they can make a mistake, because that's you and me both. Number two, I assume I'm going to get fired that moment. That's why I save it up till the end. Don't scare me into thinking I'm going to get fired if you really care about your network. You want me to believe that I'm not going to get fired. And the third thing is, I can be sued for not correcting the boss when he gives a speech that's wrong. If the person in charge of that location, that bank, is telling people in the room something wrong about security that will endanger people, I have to correct them. You're not allowed to correct me. That's embarrassing. You've already paid me up front. It's my job to correct you because you're wrong. And then I sit down and I take my medicine. I get fired. It doesn't matter. It's the end of the process anyway. That's why I'm very good at doing everything really fast and not making mistakes if I can. This is like the fourth take. You don't see the other bad takes. Because it doesn't matter what the bad takes contain. What matters is, what am I doing that has an effect on other people that I am going to be held responsible for? Dr. Bricks had a duty as part of her job. She's apparently on or running the coronavirus task force or something, to tell him, Mr. President, you made a mistake. You can't use disinfectant in the human body. Were you actually insinuating that? Because maybe you weren't. You might have gotten mixed up. Because before that, light disinfectant and other, including alcohol and a few things, were discussed by the person directly before him. He then took what he heard and he just misspoke. Now, I give Donald Trump the benefit of the doubt until he removes all doubt. Oh, I was just making a joke. That means he was cognizant of what he was saying not being true. That's the same thing as saying, I said something that wasn't true, because if he's claiming I was being sarcastic, which he was not, what he is saying is, I made a mistake and I'm not willing to say so. But I made a mistake yesterday by not stating flat out. The people who don't correct him, which are the only ones that should, are the people in the room at that moment, because he just said something on national television live that was not true, or alluded to it, or misspoke. I'm going to be generous and say he misspoke until he said he was making a joke. Again, if he was being sarcastic, he was conscious of the fact of what he was saying not being true. We're done. Next, the UV light statement. I'm going to correct something here really quickly. And also the lung fluid test, or lung fluid disinfectant test, or experiment. Number one, there are several varieties of ultraviolet light. One of them kills flesh and also kills disease. It's a germicidal ultraviolet light, or germicidal fluorescent materials, whatever. The other one doesn't hurt tissue, and it will kill viruses very easily. But it won't do it if the surface has any level of any fluid on it. If it's your eye, it won't get to the cornea. It expends the energy in the tear layer. On human skin, it'll do it in the upper layer, which is mostly dead tissue anyway, or oils. UV light that wouldn't destroy your lungs can't work to kill this because you'd have to have effectively dry lungs. No, the UV light won't work in the lungs. If you want to say they were injecting UV light, that is you twisting the words and ignoring what he said. He was talking about light and disinfectant and injecting, and he was implying injecting because that word is not used for light most of the time, although it could be. We can give him the benefit of the doubt. He was talking about injecting disinfectant in the lung, and that's it. Well, that's just because you're politically motivated. Absolutely nobody on this fucking planet agrees with you at this point except Fox News and a couple of people who want to give him the benefit of the doubt to the point they ignore him saying, and I'm going to repeat this, I was being sarcastic equals I was saying something I knew wasn't real. I want you to sit there and try to make these statements mixed together. He said something he is aware now was wrong. He misspoke. If he just said, I misspoke, I'm sorry, I was trying to talk about UV light, can we use UV light in the lungs? And what they should have said immediately is, disinfectant can't work in the lungs. We don't have a type that would do that. If we did, we'd be using it, although there is a variation of it. And we can't use UV light in the lungs because it'll either destroy the skin tissue in the lungs, or if it doesn't destroy the tissue, it's ineffective because it can't get through the first layer of fluid. I just answered your questions, and that'll be at the top of the video because that means something. Last, there was a study or an experiment a long time ago of putting what we now kind of refer to as artificial blood. It's the one that's red. It's a chemical compound that works a little bit like blood. It works well enough. I brought up a person having that poured into the lungs to get rid of a bacterial infection. I can't find the paper on that, so this is now going to have to be me saying I can't prove that ever happened. I can't prove that it was done as a test. It was done on a person who was dying from something else. I can't find it. It was originally a bad translation from another language, but I can't find the paper anymore or the experiment. So we're going to say I made an unsupported and improper claim. See how much agony I'm in for saying that? I made a mistake. Yeah, and I'm wrong until I acknowledge I was wrong. Now I can say, yeah, I made a mistake. I acknowledge it later. I'm not currently wrong about it. I said something that I can't support. And yeah, it was for putting in antibiotics into human lungs that were too flooded with fluid. The idea was to put in something that would thin it, and artificial blood was supposed to work. I can't find it. I can't prove it existed. You should ignore it. You should definitely not try it. Was that agonizing? Did it break anything? Am I going to look like an idiot tomorrow? Maybe. But I'm not telling you to go look for that methodology and try it as an alternative treatment. And specifically, it was a person with so much damage that effectively if they gave them a blood transfusion, it would bleed into the lungs, so they just filled up the lung instead. Again, I can't find it. I made a mistake. That is not something that's supposed to be impossible for you to say. Again, he made some assertions, and then later he said he was being sarcastic, which means he was aware he was saying something that wasn't accurate. You can't take that away from the situation. And the doctor to his right and his entire staff and the entirety of journalism has a right and a duty to correct him by demanding he clarify himself. All that he had to do was stop interrupting the guy. And more importantly, the CNN reporter or whatever should have said, I'm not letting you interrupt me. Did you or did you not say the following? Bleach or disinfectant injected into the lungs? Yes or no? I don't have to answer it. You have to answer it because you just said something that sounded like that. It doesn't matter if you believe that. You probably just misspoke. Freaking answer the question. Yes or no? Should human beings have disinfectant injected into the lungs? Because that's not what the other doctor said. You might have said, oh, because he got mixed up. He's got a lot on his mind. Let's just say that. Until he removed all doubt today. And now he won't even answer questions because he's running away. Haven't you been in a pool of water? Went up your nose or mouth? Chlorine is chlorine. It hasn't killed us yet. He's also saying that he didn't know if it could be done. Excuse me, now he's saying he was being sarcastic. Which is it? Knowingly saying something wrong? As a joke? He said blah, blah. He said a lot of things. You have to acknowledge what he said. And no, you can't breathe or drink chlorine. You're not supposed to. At disinfectant levels, it's dangerous. And the disinfectants they were talking about specifically would be lethal. And everybody who makes them has said it would be lethal. Don't do this. Shut up. Literally, this is a straw man argument. He was talking about using UV light in treatment like the guy before him said. No, he was referring to disinfectant and UV light. I've already covered that in this video. And I covered it in a separate video about UV light. It was a very specific frequency. But again, it can't get through a layer of even water, which makes it extremely safe. But it's for surfaces and maybe disinfecting your hair or clothing. It's not safe inside of the human body or effective. In this case, not effective. And the other one that's effective isn't safe. The guy also said disinfectant in the throat. That's not what Donald Trump was talking about. Maybe he got throat and bronchial tubes mixed up. He could have said that. He didn't. He said he was being sarcastic. We're done. He closed the door on this weasel room today or yesterday. Trump was asking how light inside the body. He did not say inject with disinfectant. Yes, he specifically did. He might have said talking about injecting ultraviolet light, disinfectant. He was bumbling his words again. Somebody should have demanded a clarification or should have simply said that what you said is going to make people think the wrong thing. The accurate answer is XYZ. Nobody corrected him in the room. I made a mistake by not saying in the room. This is clutching at straws. He paused and turned and said the following, blah, 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 blah. I wonder, and I'm not even going to quote it, it's just two bits. I wonder if anti-Trump people really believe the stuff they pretend they hear. How do you not hear him say these things? I even put the transcript below that was the best I could find. Him turning away from the mic doesn't invalidate what he said. And everybody should have said, this is going to cause confusion. I don't care if you're president. We're going to correct this. You're not allowed to have a mic right now. Everyone knows UV disinfects. It also destroys flesh. If you were to shine UV into the lungs, it'd be a fiber optic bronchoscopy tool. Does that type of tool allow UV light to go through at all? I'm going to put a link below in the description about whether or not UV light goes through one of those things correctly. Number one. Number two, germicidal UV light, except for a very specific frequency, destroys flesh. Next, UV light is ionizing radiation. It can cause cancer. You being ignorant and posting isn't acceptable. Now